Hello everyone, my name is Scott Ryan. I am the managing editor of the Blue Rose magazine, and always music in the air. And I don't know if you know this, but we have Mary X with us.
Lipstick on straight.
Yeah. You look beautiful as always. In the words of you, what the fuck?
I said, I think they're starting to walk out and say, what the fuck was that?
So earlier today you told me that when your first feature film played, that your father went to the drive-in and watched it every day of the week.
That's right, every night at the drive-in. Yeah.
What do you think of this one?
You know, he was my dad. He would have been proud of anything I did. So
I love it. But it's so interesting. I don't know if people know, but tell us the backstory of how this is David Lynch's student film, which is crazy.
Yeah, I was living in Los Angeles. My roommate, Doreen, was a volunteer at the American Film Institute. And she came home one day and she said, I've been assigned to work for a new young director and he's looking for an actress. And I said, my roommate's an actress. So she invited him for dinner. And he and his wife came out for dinner. We were living out in Topanga Canyon. And so I met David. I opened the door and here stood this guy with a straw hat wearing 2 neckties. He had his favorite necktie and his special occasion necktie. And that's how I met David Lynch.
I love that so much. Did you do other student films, or is this the only one?
I was always doing student films, because how is a director going to learn how to direct unless he works with professional actors? So I was always volunteering. Nothing ever happened to them. I never saw them again, and I thought, well, this is just going to be another one of those. You know, I had no idea that a year and a half later I would still be working on Eraserhead and starting to work on the Waltons at the same time. I would work all night. David only worked after midnight because they determined he was using too much film. It was 35mm film. And he was running out of film, and so they said, sorry, we can't support you anymore. So we started working only after midnight, so no one would know we were there. And we were out of there by dawn in the morning. And Sissy Spacek, who is David's sister-in-law, paid for all the film from then on. So she bought all the 35mm film that he needed to finish the film.
That's
and it was like another year of working.
So, was this before or after Little House? Were you on Little House?
Before Little House. The Waltons started a year before Little House, and I did their pilot. And then a year later, I started on Little House on the Prairie. Remember Miss Beale, the school teacher? That was Mary X.
And I mean, it's such a strange thing to have on your resume. Did it get you jobs? I mean, did people know about Eraserhead?
No, Eraserhead didn't even come out for like another 5 years. It took him that long to put it together, to get it released. And then I remember that I think the first screening was at one of the big film festivals in Los Angeles, and that was the first time it was shown.
And so, you start this, and then your career is really taking off at this point. I mean, why continue on the student film? Did you ever say, "Look, kid, I finished this damn thing. I'm on TV."
No. You do a job and you do it till it's done. And I have to be quite honest with you, I did not understand Eraserhead. I didn't know, where it was going to go in a story sense. But if you're an actress, you do what the director tells you to do. And it wasn't my job to figure that out. It was the director's job. And David was so sincere and so dedicated on what he was doing that I just followed his direction. Somebody says, well, what about when you were pulling the suitcase out from under the bed? Why was it so hard? I said, because David told me to pull it until he said stop.
The other thing I was thinking about is Fred Elms worked forever. The sound guy, Alan Splett, he worked forever. You worked forever. Catherine, Jack, David. I mean, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? How many famous people came from this film? Do you think that's why the film lasted, because all of you had this talent? Or do you think because it became a cult classic, you guys had this?
I can't tell you. I don't know. I just know that we believed so much in David and what he believed in. He was so serious about every single aspect of the film that you couldn't do anything but to do what he told you to do. I think everybody that was involved with it was just completely there for David. And, we didn't know David before. But as we worked with him on a daily basis and saw his seriousness and his dedication that you didn't question when he asked you to do something. So we stuck in there till the end. I remember I'd be working all night on Eraserhead, and then I was doing the Waltons at the time. I did their pilot episode, and I had been up all night the day I started on it. And I was a crazy person. I finished at about 6 in the morning, and I drove to a friend's house, actually it was my ex-husband's house, to change my clothes so I could go to Warner Brothers and do the Waltons. And there's a scene in the episode that I did where the whole Walton family is sitting in the living room, and they have just found my little girl who is deaf. I don't know if you ever saw that episode, but I couldn't remember my lines, but I tried to cover it up as much as I could, but I was a complete blithering idiot, But they were great. They were very kind.
Tell me about your lifelong friendship with Jack Nance. I mean, it wasn't like you were just in this movie. You guys, you knew him all the way.
We met on Eraserhead, and we stayed friends. Oh gosh. He was having a hard time. Jack had a couple of problems that made it hard for him to work, and he went off to do a film with Dennis Hopper, and I can't remember who was directing it or even what the film was, but they were halfway cross country, and Jack was not doing well, and so Dennis Hopper brought him home, brought him back to LA, and put him in a recovery home. And I heard he was there, and so I called the recovery home, and I said, may I please speak to Jack Nance? And they said, just a minute, please. Waited and waited and waited and waited. I can hear footsteps. And I hear somebody pick up the phone. He goes, hello? I said, Jack, it's Charlotte. He went, I knew you'd find me. And that started his recovery, and then David hired the two of us to do Twin Peaks. And by that time, we were not a couple, we were roommates. We were sharing a house in the San Fernando Valley, and we started working together on Twin Peaks.
And before we get to Twin Peaks, I want you to tell one more story about Eraserhead. Tell me about the body cast.
Oh, okay. There was a scene that David had written where we're in bed, and I'm doing that gnarly thing, and Henry starts pushing, he pulls back the covers, and he starts pushing on my abdomen, and he's pushing, and this is the way David wanted it, and he pushes through my body into a pit of fetuses. So in order to do that, he had to make a cast of my body. And so my roommate Doreen and I went to David's house, and we went into the guest bedroom, and he had laid a plastic cover over the bed, and I laid down, stark naked, and he painted my body with moulage all the way down to my knees and all the way up to here, and I laid there for about an hour while he painted me with, what is the plastic?
Paper mache?
Well, not paper mache, but it was a heavy plastic, and I had to lay there till it hardened. And then he used that to do the special effect, which is not in the movie, because it didn't work. But what he did was he pushed through it, broke through the abdomen, and then into the pit of fetuses. But it didn't work, so he couldn't use it. So he gave me the body cast. And I had it for 40 years or something until somebody came and wanted. I just couldn't keep it anymore. I think it was just time to give up. I had it on my living room wall for 40 years.
Well, you can only keep a pit of fetuses for so long. And eventually it's just like, it's too much. And also, again, with the connections, you, Jack, Catherine all end up on Twin Peaks.
That's right. David called me up one day, and this was, I don't know, I can't remember how long after, and, hello, Charlotte, it's David. We always shout it. You want to go to work? And that was the start of Twin Peaks.
And did you know what your character would be? Did you have to read lines, or how did that work?
I didn't know anything. I just said yes. So, no, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who Down Davis was, who was playing Major Briggs. Turned out I was Betty Briggs. I didn't know that. But we just, we took it a day at a time. And there was a time when the network didn't know if they wanted to let Twin Peaks go on. So we were taking it basically a day at a time. And what we would do is once a week we would all gather together, the whole cast, and we would watch the episode. David didn't want any of the actors to be on set unless they were in the shot. So we didn't know what the story was, the cast. So we would meet once a week at somebody's house, usually it was Dana Ashbrook's house, and watch the show to find out what was happening. Swear to God. And when Agent Cooper opened the door at the hotel and was shot, we thought we were out of work. In fact, it was Kimmy Robertson who went, "Are we out of work?" But we weren't.
That's adorable. How about coming back 25 years later? Twin Peaks comes back again, and you film a scene with the chair, and it's your last scene with David Lynch.
Oh, that one. Oh,
yeah, you get reunited with Dana Ashbrook.
Right. By this time, Dana is still playing my son, but he's a deputy sheriff now. He's no longer a juvenile delinquent. And that was I just did the one scene in the what do you call it?
The Return.
Yep. And I didn't know what it was going to be about. I didn't see a script until I got to the location, and it was them coming in, and I revealed the fact that Don Davis, Major Briggs, had left something in the chair to, firm up a story point in the whole show. So I didn't know what that was going to be. I had no idea. They just told me to go over and to open up the arm of the chair and reach in and get it, but I didn't know what it was.
I know, that's so amazing. And then you decided that would wrap things up for you.
That was it. Yep, that was it.
I mean, that's how does it feel to have David Lynch direct you in your last scene as an actress?
It was amazing. It was just amazing. I had I did a lot of student films, and how are they going to learn to work with actors
Right.
if you don't work with a professional actor? So I was very supportive. I'm supportive of you, filmmakers.
We've mentioned, Jack Nance is a co-star, or Dana Ashbrook, but another co-star of yours just happens to be the king, Elvis Presley.
I did a movie with Elvis, and this was, I don't remember. I'm getting old. I just turned 84 years old. And I can't remember shit. I don't know when things happened, but yes, I got to work with Elvis Presley. It was back when I was very young. I was just married to Tim Considine, who used to be on My Three Sons, and I got hired to just play a waitress in a drive-in restaurant, and Elvis was there, and he was so sweet. I worked with him for 2 days, and when we finished the first scene, and they had to, how they break apart and they say, okay, we've got to relight, and go sit in a chair or something. So Elvis got me a chair, pulled up next to his, and he took my hand, and he told me about his mother, Gladys. And I'm sitting there and I'm holding Elvis's hand and I'm thinking, holy shit, Elvis is holding me. He was very sweet, very sweet.
But that's incredible that you were in a movie with Elvis Presley. Your career has been
I was still in my 20s then. I worked until I turned 65. And to tell you the truth, I couldn't remember my lines anymore. So I didn't think it was fair to work with a director or other actors when I was going to go, line, So I quit and I retired and I've never been busier.
Also, you've hobnobbed with so many rock and roll legends. Can you share anything about Jim Morrison or Neil Young, or can you give us or Joni Mitchell? You knew all of these unbelievable icons.
I did. Well, I grew up sewing. So when I didn't have a lot to do, I would sew, and I opened a store called the Liquid Butterfly, and it was on La Cienega Boulevard, and it just happened that in the same building was Elliot Roberts, who was the manager for Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, and what was his name?
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison. And I had kind of a hip store, I'd like to say,
the Liquid Butterfly is the coolest thing ever.
I made cowboy shirts and peasant dresses, and people used to come and hang out in my store, and it was just kind of fun, yeah. And one day I came into my store, and Jim Morrison was standing there, and it was right across from Elektra Records. So I was on the second floor, and he was standing in my store looking out the window at Elektra Records, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you don't mind that I'm here, do you?" No, it's okay. So a bunch of us used to walk down to the different restaurants on La Cienega, and we'd have drinks and dinner and, gab and talk. And Jim was quite a drinker, and he didn't always like to drink alone. So he used to invite me, and quite often he would be a little inebriated, and I'd have to take him home. I was protecting him. He was a friend.
That's a good
And then one day he said, he called me up at my store and he said, "I gotta get out of town, you wanna go?" Yeah. And he didn't know where he wanted to go. He just wanted to get out of LA. He was in a lot of trouble. He had done a show back east, I don't know if you've heard about it, where he was arrested for indecent exposure, and he was facing court. He was going to have to go back east and go to court. And so I said, okay, and he came and picked me up, and he didn't know where he wanted to go. So we headed up Highway 1 out of LA, and we just kept going up Pacific Coast Highway. So he didn't know anything about it, but I had friends up there. So we would go stop and visit my friends, and then I'd take him to Hearst Castle, and I have pictures of him walking around the Hearst Castle. And he just wanted some peace. You know, I think that's where he was in his life. And I was a friend he could trust. So, you know, and within 6 months he was gone.
It's crazy. Tell me something about Catherine Coulson. I know we talked a little bit about her last night, but not everybody was here. Share a little bit about your adventures with Catherine up in the Twin Peaks Festival for all those years.
Yeah, up there in Snoqualmie Falls. We spent a lot of time up there, and Catherine and I were about the same age. You know, we became really good buddies, and of course I knew her because she was married to Jack Nance, you know, and we went through Eraserhead together, so we had been friends for a long time. But she was not well, and she trusted me, so we would just kind of hang out together, you know, while we were in Snoqualmie Falls. And she was such a beautiful person. As you probably could tell if you were, you know, if you saw the film on her last night, it was, you know, she was wonderful. And I'm sorry I didn't get to see her, you know, toward the end. I didn't know. When I wrote a book called Little House in the Hollywood Hills, and there's a section about Catherine in it, and my publisher wanted to meet her, so he drove up to Oregon. Was it Oregon where she was?
Yeah.
The theater in Oregon. He drove up there to get some quotes from her for my book, and he didn't realize that was when she was ill, so it was just at the very end. God bless her. She gave me some quotes.
Wow, I didn't know that. What do I do in finding out about you after all these years? I'm supposed to know everything. And not to make it too sad, but you know, we lost David this year. I feel like all of us are, you know, trying to work through our grief through these films. You certainly knew David, and he was very kind to you through the year and very loyal. Can you give us a little piece of how we can feel better about this and how we can move
Gosh, there's
forward?
no way I can feel better. You know, when you lose a friend, you know, it's terrible. But I was so honored to have been a part of his creativity. You know, I saw it from the beginning. You know, I was there at the American Film Institute when he was first starting out, and, you know, saw him figuring out things. You know, every day he was figuring out things, how to do something, and he was so kind to me. Eraserhead, I was on it for, what, a year and a half or something like that. I just had such respect for him. And, you know, the next project he did was Anne Bancroft.
Elephant Man.
And Elephant Man. That was his next movie. So, you know, they were big fans of Eraserhead and hired him for major motion picture. And he just, you know, he took off. He took off.
Can I get you to tell the Wild at Heart story about Diane Ladd getting your part? David Lynch looking at you. Do you know what I'm trying to set you up? We didn't plan for this one.
Oh, yes, we
You
were.
know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yes, I do.
I think this is very fascinating.
Yeah, this was, I think it was after or in the middle of doing Twin Peaks,
Right.
maybe. And David invited, Jack and I were roommates while we were doing, a lot of the time we were doing Twin Peaks. We were not a couple, we were just best friends, and we shared a house. And David called us up and said, you know, having dinner, and I'd like you guys to come. So we did. And it was this small restaurant in the San Fernando Valley, and Laura Dern was there, and I'm sitting, and Jack had gone, I don't know, gone to do something, and I look at the end of the table, and Laura Dern and David Lynch, and I forget, there was one other person, and they're just staring at me. And I thought it was because I wore high heels that night, and I don't work very well in high heels. I thought maybe they were talking about how clumsy I was or something. They were just staring at me. And I got, turns out they were looking if I was the right person to be in
Wild at Heart.
The Wild at Heart, but I didn't get the part. So.
But
Probably because I was clumsy.
No, I mean, you lose it to Laura Dern's actual mom. You can't outdo the actual mom gets your part. But I would have loved to see how you would have played Laura Dern's mom. I think you guys could pull it off. I think you could be Laura Dern's mom, but you know, what are you gonna do? I don't want anyone to run off yet, because there's a couple things that we're gonna need from you guys. So we're gonna need your help. We can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago we were here, and we took a picture with Charlotte, and we're gonna recreate it tonight. We need your guys' help. So that's coming. But before I do that, I have a couple announcements to make. The first one is, do you know why we're all here? Is of course for David Lynch. But secondly, is because of Daniel Knox, and I want you to give Daniel We're only halfway through this, and this man has worked on this forever. A lot of people think we pulled this off because of David passing. We've been talking about this for a year. He calls me in the middle of the night. He calls me in the morning. What about Eraserhead into Dune? No, it's horrible. I'll call you back. This guy plans everything, and he has done so much for you guys to have this. So when you can, give this man some love, pick up his pins, buy a poster. So that's A. B, tomorrow night we have a very special showing of George Griffith's From the Head. I would love for it to be this full. It's an incredible movie. This is going to be the first time it's shown on 35mm prints. He's got a new print we're going to watch. And if you never believed me before, just please pee before you watch that movie. You think I'm joking, but you're going to have to pee while you watch that movie. I'm not going to spoil why, but later you're going to say thank you. Thank you for that. The line to the bathroom for that should be before. What time is it tomorrow? 9? 8:45, so we would love to see you there. Did I hit all my announcements, Daniel? I think I did. Okay, now here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna recreate this picture. We need all of you on your feet. And Charlotte, did we? No, don't worry about it. Charlotte was right here, I believe.
Yeah. And you took it from up there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go up there. Charlotte,
I've got it on my phone, if I can show it to you guys later.
Yeah, she has this picture. We put it in the Blue Rose. It was issue 17. And maybe you guys even want to applaud for Charlotte. I don't know. Thank you for doing that. Why don't you walk Charlotte up before they start leaving? Charlotte has only 25 pictures that she can sign of her when she gave that cast back to David Lynch that she talked about. She's happy to sign them for you. She's got some pictures from Eraserhead. And she will also sign my book. I interviewed her about the chair. It's in the music book. She's about halfway through. I'm just killing time to distract you so we can get her up there without someone mobbing her. I would mob her if I could. Thank you for everything. You guys have been great. And we will Doom. It's Doom, and it's the good one.